The other thing that a lot of people asked me, especially because I'm a historian, was about Trump's announcement today that he's going to clean out. Of course, he said this last week. There was an order about it last week, but that he's going to clean out the Smithsonian. The what he considers the woke exhibits in the Smithsonian, that say things like, and this is a quote, "how bad slavery was," as well as he says, "tear America down." And people asked me how I would respond to that. And let me start by saying a couple of things about how bad slavery was. That's not negotiable in any way. And I often think that privileged Americans like myself don't really understand what it means to have everything about your life owned by someone else. But if I can maybe give you a little bit of a window on that, it is having your firstborn child put on your chest and knowing that somebody can take it away at any time. So the idea that it's a problem to talk about how bad slavery was is, a non-starter. So I'm not gonna go any further that way, but I wanna point out that that has extraordinary modern day implications. That is, when Trump says that, he's not just talking about how enslaved Americans maybe didn't have it so bad. That's not all he is saying. This is a mindset that says that people who are subordinate to a ruling class don't have it so bad. That's where they belong in life. That's sort of the places that will make them happy. And this is precisely the language that enslavers used before the Civil War when they talked about how the world was made up in such a way that most people were what they called mudsills. And a mudsill in that era was literally pieces of wood that were driven into the ground because, of course, we didn't have concrete in those days to create foundations, or we didn't have pilings or any of the things that we use nowadays to support buildings. They would literally drive wood into the dirt, into the mud, and those sills, those mud sills, would be the support for the plantation homes above them. And they articulated that most of the world in society, most of the people in society were like those mud sills. They could be worked. They weren't very smart. They didn't really need education and they didn't need decent food or decent housing, but they were good workers and they would produce a lot of work that would create a value in products like timber or cotton or fish or any of the different ways in which plantation homes and plantation systems made money. Because it wasn't just cotton, there was other stuff they produced as well. I'm not going to go into where those different things happen, but give me that one. But they would produce this value that the people who legally owned them could then sell, and they, the owners, would accumulate the wealth that those people at the bottom produced. And they said, and they told themselves that those people in the mudsill class, by which they define not just Black Americans, but also white Northern operatives meaning not in the modern term of spies, but people who worked in factories, that this was the way the world worked. And those people were content there. This was perfectly fine to put them there. This is what Trump is saying when he says it's a problem to talk about how bad slavery is. Because if you bring that to the modern day, you are imposing on a world in which Americans expect to be treated equally before the law and to have a say in their government and to have equal access to resources like education and healthcare and jobs, that world that envisions equality is the wrong one. that the world that he sees is one in which the vast majority of us should be just fine in a system in which we're just supposed to work and, let our betters take care of society and the world. It was a truly poisonous statement, and not just because of what it implied about enslavement in America before the Civil War, but also because of what it means in the present, what he is reading back from that.